On March 18, 2010, an unsettling discovery disrupted the quiet streets of Langford, British Columbia. The burned remains of 18-year-old Kimberly Proctor, concealed inside a hockey bag. The community was left in shock as investigators faced a case that, at first, seemed almost impossible to unravel. The suspects believed they had erased all traces of their actions, hiding behind the vast digital world of online games and anonymous chat rooms. But they were wrong. A single misstep left behind a trail of evidence buried within over 1.4 billion pages of data and chat transcripts. And it was here, in an unexpected place, a World of Warcraft chat log, that the first clues began to surface. This is the story of Kimberly Proctor, a young life taken far too soon, and how determination, technology, and investigative persistence ensured that those responsible were held accountable. Langford, British Columbia, a city known for its scenic beauty, thriving community, and reputation as one of the fastest-growing areas on Vancouver Island. With its picturesque parks, lakes, and family-friendly neighborhoods, Langford has long been considered a safe and welcoming place to live. While its crime rate has historically been lower than the provincial average, no community is immune to tragedy. And in 2010, a crime so shocking unfolded here that it shattered the city's sense of security. Born in 1991, Kimberly Proctor spent her entire life in Langford. She lived with her parents, Fred and Lucia, and her brother Rob. Described as a kind-hearted and gentle soul, Kimberly was a homebody at heart. She loved listening to music, playing on her computer, and caring for animals. She found comfort in the quiet routines of home life, surrounded by those she loved most. Close friend Melissa recalled how Kimberly's sense of humor and rambunctious spirit made her the perfect partner for movie nights and mall trips. She was also a devoted animal lover, caring for rabbits, a beloved dog, several cats, and aspired to work in wildlife conservation. However, like many teenagers, she faced personal challenges that made aspects of her life difficult. Kimberly's sincerity made her a target for relentless teasing. Classmates mocked her for wearing cat ears, meowing at her in class, and the bullying never stopped. Her mother recalled that she faced challenges throughout her life. Kimberly also struggled with attention deficit disorder, or ADD, which made navigating crowded hallways overwhelming. Medication dulled her personality, so her parents sought a better learning environment. They eventually transferred her to Pacific Secondary School, an alternative institution in Langford, British Columbia. This school catered to students seeking individualized attention, including those who may have faced challenges in traditional educational settings. The student body comprised individuals with diverse backgrounds, some of whom had experienced difficulties such as learning disabilities or behavioral issues. At Pacific Secondary, Kimberly hoped to find a community where she could thrive. It was here that she encountered Cruz Wellwood, a fellow student with a troubled history. Notably, Cameron Moffat was not enrolled at Pacific Secondary. However, his close friendship with Cruz brought him into Kimberly's social circle. To understand the events that led to this tragedy, we need to examine the backgrounds of Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat. Both came from troubled pasts that raised concerns long before Kimberly's devastating fate. Their disturbing behaviors and dark thoughts were evident even before they carried out their premeditated scheme. Cruz Wellwood came from a difficult upbringing. His father, Robert Deswan, was convicted of a serious crime and sentenced to life in prison for an offense involving a 16-year-old girl. Cruz had no direct relationship with his father. His own behavior raised concerns. From an early age, he exhibited a growing interest in dark themes and showed a noticeable lack of empathy. He was known to share disturbing thoughts online. frequently engaging in unsettling discussions and making inappropriate remarks about harm. Cameron Moffat had a history of serious behavioral issues, often struggling to control his temper. His difficulties in school led to multiple expulsions, and he was known for engaging in destructive actions, including setting fires. Teachers and peers found him aggressive and challenging to handle. Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat first crossed paths in elementary school, forming a friendship that deepened over time. As they grew older, they began skipping classes together and engaging in troubling behaviors. Their shared defiance of authority and growing interest in violent themes strengthened their bond. Much of their time was spent online, where their conversations took a dark turn. What started as disturbing discussions gradually escalated, leading to the crime that would later shock their community. Kimberly and Cruz first connected through mutual friends at Pacific Secondary School. At first, their interactions were friendly, and Kimberly even briefly dated one of Cruz's friends. Over time, Cruz developed an interest in her and eventually asked her out. She initially agreed, but later decided to end things through a text message before their relationship could progress further. This rejection seemed to trigger resentment in Cruz, though Kimberly never suspected the extent of his anger. Despite the breakup, they continued to interact, though their dynamic shifted. Cruz and Cameron began to distance themselves from Kimberly, making unkind remarks and isolating her socially. Online, they mocked her, and in person, they excluded and belittled her. Kimberly, who had already faced bullying in the past, found herself caught in yet another painful cycle. Her trusting nature made it difficult for her to recognize just how dangerous Cruz and Cameron truly were. These private messages were later recovered by investigators. They revealed a deeply disturbing pattern of violent fantasies and premeditation. The conversation you're about to see played a crucial role in solving the case. As investigators began combing through digital evidence, they uncovered a series of private messages between Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat. What started as vague conversations soon escalated into something far more disturbing. Carefully worded exchanges that hinted at a premeditated plan. Though the actual messages were chilling, the digital trail they left behind would prove critical in unraveling the truth. The two teens spoke in code. They discussed when, where, and how, and even agreed on a phrase that would signal the start of their plan, AD. With every message, their intentions became clearer. Investigators later testified that these digital conversations showed not just impulsivity, but long-term planning, manipulation, and a complete disregard for the consequences. Shortly after those messages were exchanged, Cruz reached out to Kimberly directly. He told her he wanted to clear the air, to explain why he and Cameron had been treating her differently. Kimberly, always trying to see the good in people, agreed to meet. They planned to see each other the next morning, March 18th, 2010, at the Langford Exchange bus terminal around 10 a.m. That evening, Cruz and Kimberly spoke on the phone for nearly an hour. What she didn't know was that during that call, Cameron was online with Cruz, discussing the final steps of their plan in real time. March 18th, 2010, started like any other Thursday for Kimberly Proctor. She had made plans to babysit that afternoon, something she was known for doing reliably. But that morning, she left home with a different purpose, one that only a few people knew about. She dressed in her usual style, dark colors, expressive accessories. Her outfit that day included a black hoodie with a red 13 on the front, and a pair of pink, blue, and green high-top Converse sneakers, an unmistakable look that her friends would later describe in heart-wrenching detail. At around 10 a.m., she was spotted stepping off a BC Transit bus at the Langford Exchange, a small bus terminal in the heart of town. Waiting for her at the stop were Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat. After leaving the Langford Exchange bus terminal, Kimberly Proctor met up with Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat. Together, they walked along Happy Valley Road toward Cruz's residence. As they approached the house, Kimberly likely believed she was going to reconcile past misunderstandings with Cruz. Unbeknownst to her, a meticulously planned betrayal awaited. Once inside Cruz Wellwood's house, Kimberly was led to believe that they were going to talk things through. But the friendly facade didn't last long. Cruz locked the door behind her, and within moments the tone shifted. Cameron, who had been quiet up until now, joined in as the two teens executed the plan they had been discussing for weeks. Cruz casually walked into the kitchen, opened a cupboard, and uttered a phrase that, to an outsider, would seem meaningless. "I think I'm going to make some KD," short for Kraft dinner. This seemingly ordinary sentence was, in reality, a chilling signal, a prearranged code that meant it was time to act. Kimberly was unable to leave the situation. Trapped as the hours passed, the two carried out their premeditated plan, showing no regard for the trust she had placed in them. Eventually, she was left in a confined space where she was unable to escape. Investigators later determined that she could not have survived in such conditions. At some point during that day, Cruz sat at his computer and sent Kimberly a message, a seemingly casual note that investigators would later examine closely. "Are you done babysitting yet?" At the time, it appeared like a routine check-in, but it later became a key piece of evidence. Meanwhile, later that evening, Cameron sent a text to an ex-girlfriend, inviting her to come over to Cruz's house. She ultimately decided not to go, unaware of the circumstances surrounding that night. As the hours passed, Kimberly's family began to worry. She hadn't come home. She wasn't answering her phone. And she hadn't shown up for her babysitting job that afternoon, something completely out of character for her. By that evening, her parents reported her missing.
911, what's your emergency?
The search began immediately.
620, give me that job on Mulligan.
Missing persons cases police are working through is the disappearance of 18-year-old Kimberly Proctor. The Langford teen hasn't been seen since Thursday, and her family is pleading for the public's help.
Her family, friends, and neighbors mobilized a search effort. They handed out flyers across Langford, posted on social media, and hoped for her safe return. A Facebook group dedicated to finding Kimberly quickly grew to over 4,500 members within days, showing just how concerned the community was. Meanwhile, Cruz and Cameron, they went about their lives. In the hours following the crime, Kimberly's body had been concealed in a freezer inside Cruz's garage. But instead of showing any remorse, the two teens turned their attention to the next part of their plan, getting rid of the evidence. The following day, Cruz and Cameron made the deliberate decision to conceal the evidence. They placed Kimberly's remains into a large duffel-style hockey bag and transported it to another location. Cameron, being the stronger of the two, managed to lift the bag as they boarded a public bus. Their destination, a well-known hiking area near the Galloping Goose Trail, a scenic, wooded path popular with hikers and cyclists. Once they got off the bus, the two made their way into the woods, stopping under a bridge. It was there they carried out the final part of their plan. Cameron had purchased camping fuel from a local Canadian Tire store the day before, another detail that confirmed just how methodically this was planned. After they left the scene, Cruz went back to his house. Cameron joined his family for brunch. They acted as though nothing had happened. No signs of guilt, no change in behavior, but the truth wouldn't stay buried for long. Less than 36 hours after Kimberly Proctor was reported missing, police received a disturbing call.
911, what's your emergency?
Around 7 p.m. on March 19th, A group of hikers walking along the Galloping Goose Trail near Colwood, just outside Langford, came across something unusual beneath a bridge near Millstream Creek.
On Friday evening, a horrifying discovery was made near Colwood, just off the Galloping Goose Trail. The charred remains of a woman. While an autopsy has since been completed, authorities have yet to confirm the victim's identity. Loved ones of a missing young woman, last seen Thursday night, are holding on to hope, fearing the worst but praying it isn't her.
Within 3 days, investigators confirmed what Kimberly's family had feared the most.
Murder in Colwood is indeed their daughter.
Using dental records, the remains were positively identified as Kimberly's. The devastating news sent shockwaves through her family and the local community. Investigators now faced a daunting challenge, uncovering the truth behind a crime that initially appeared to have left few clues behind. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, launched one of the largest investigations the region had ever seen. More than 40 officers, including specialized units from across Vancouver Island and the mainland, were brought in. Working around the clock, the RCMP team quickly amassed over 20,000 collective hours of investigative effort. To reconstruct Kimberly's final moments, detectives meticulously traced her steps. They interviewed classmates, friends, teachers, and anyone else who had recently interacted with her, both face-to-face and online. Her activity on social media, text messages, and even private chat platforms would soon uncover the shocking truth. Kimberly's digital presence soon emerged as a central focus. Investigators carefully combed through a staggering amount of data: her social media profiles, personal text messages, emails, and numerous private chat logs. It was a mountain of data, but somewhere in the noise, detectives found something. A disturbing pattern was beginning to emerge. Among the names that emerged during interviews was Cruz Wellwood, a classmate Kimberly had briefly dated and considered a friend. However, in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, their interactions had changed. Kimberly ended their brief relationship through text message, prompting Cruz and his close friend, Cameron Moffat, to distance themselves. Classmates noticed the boys making hurtful remarks about Kimberly online, but no one imagined the seriousness of their intentions. As investigators obtained search warrants and conducted computer forensic analysis, they gained access to private messages exchanged between Cruz and Cameron. What they uncovered was alarming. The teens weren't just venting frustrations. They were planning something sinister. Their conversations included disturbing details. Soon, critical clues began to emerge. Investigators received numerous tips, but one particular revelation changed everything. A teenage girl who had communicated with Cruz through an online game came forward to police. She shared that Cruz had confessed to her directly, sending links to news articles about Kimberly's case and openly admitting he had been involved. With mounting evidence, including surveillance footage, online chats, and this crucial confession, the RCMP moved closer to solving the case. On June 18, 2010, exactly 3 months after Kimberly Proctor was last seen, authorities made their move. Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat, aged just 16 and 17 at the time, were arrested and charged with first-degree murder.
2 teenage boys, ages 16 and 18, were taken into custody on Friday. Both now face charges of first-degree murder, forcible confinement, and committing indignity to human remains.
Initially, the teens were interviewed simply as acquaintances who might have seen Kimberly on the day she vanished. But the digital evidence painted a much darker picture. Investigators discovered unsettling conversations between Cruz and Cameron on MSN and text messaging platforms. Police executed a search warrant at Cruz Wellwood's home on Happy Valley Road. Over the following days, forensic teams collected evidence that confirmed Kimberly had been brought to the home where the crime took place. The arrests of Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat sent shockwaves throughout the community. Two teenagers, previously seen as ordinary students, were now accused of committing one of the region's most disturbing crimes.
Crown prosecutor Peter Jook urged the judge to seek adult sentences for the teens if they're found guilty of Kimberly Proctor's murder.
From the beginning, prosecutors were clear. Despite their ages, they intended to seek adult sentences due to the calculated and severe nature of the offense. In court, chilling evidence came to light. Text messages outlined the crime step by step, and digital conversations revealed extensive premeditation. Throughout these revelations, neither Cruz nor Cameron displayed any emotion or remorse. During sentencing hearings, extensive psychological evaluations unveiled troubling aspects of their personalities. Cruz Wellwood was described as intelligent but emotionally detached, manipulative, and entirely lacking empathy. He openly admitted to long-standing violent fantasies and was diagnosed with significant psychopathic traits and sexual sadism. Cameron Moffat's psychological profile also raised serious concerns. He had a documented history of anger issues and destructive behaviors, and disturbing searches were discovered on his computer. Cameron claimed he merely followed Cruz's lead, yet evaluators found he too lacked genuine remorse and posed a continuing risk to public safety. Court evidence also revealed that on the very night of Kimberly's murder, the two teens attempted to lure another girl to Cruz's home, presumably intending to harm her as well. Fortunately, she declined their invitation. Wiretap recordings further demonstrated their lack of remorse, capturing conversations, and complained about jail conditions, never expressing regret for Kimberly's tragic death.
That sucked.
What you're hearing is a recorded conversation between Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat inside a sheriff's van, captured on their way to their first court appearance on June 21st, 2010.
They were really trying to stroke my ego, tell me how smart they think I am, and oh, you're so good at manipulating and things like that. Really, they just need to
In September 2010, both teens pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and indignity to human remains, recognizing that the evidence against them was insurmountable. The judge concluded that neither showed meaningful prospects for rehabilitation and sentenced them each to life imprisonment with eligibility for parole after 10 years. Given the exceptional severity of the crime, the court chose to lift the publication ban, usually protecting young offenders. This decision underscored the seriousness of their actions, reinforcing society's right to transparency. Outside the courtroom, Kimberly's family addressed the media. While they acknowledged the sentencing as a necessary step toward justice, it was clear that the wounds ran deep. Her father, Fred Proctor, didn't mince words. Speaking with raw honesty, he said, "There is a certain degree of closure, but these animals aren't rehabilitatable. They deserve to die a long, slow, horrific, painful death." Fred's words reflected a family devastated by grief and frustrated by the justice system, a system that, in their eyes, didn't go far enough. The sentence may have offered legal closure, but the emotional toll was far from over.
For Kimberly's family, the decision brought a small measure of closure, though the pain
A
remains.
certain degree of closure, but these animals aren't rehabilitatable. They deserve to die a long, slow, horrific, painful death.
The community of Langford, once shaken by the news of Kimberly's death, remained heartbroken but united in grief. For Kimberly's loved ones, life would never return to what it once was. But the truth had come to light, and those responsible were behind bars. Both teens were sentenced as adults due to the brutality of their actions. However, because they were under 18 when the crime was committed, Canadian law allowed for parole eligibility after 10 years, the maximum possible penalty for youth offenders sentenced as adults under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. With both Cruz Wellwood and Cameron Moffat receiving life sentences, the Proctor family hoped, at the very least, for peace and the strength to carry Kimberly's memory forward. But that peace would be short-lived. In 2019, nearly a decade after Kimberly's murder, Cruz Wellwood applied for day parole, the first opportunity he had under Canadian law. His request reopened painful wounds for the Proctor family, who were once again forced to relive the trauma in front of a parole board. Psychological assessments described Crucy as cold, manipulative, and lacking remorse. One report stated he scored in the 96th percentile for psychopathic traits, a chilling reminder of the man behind the crime. The parole board ultimately denied Cruz's request, citing his lack of remorse, his disturbing psychological profile, and his ongoing risk to public safety. Still, under Canadian law, both Cruz and Cameron are entitled to periodic parole hearings, meaning the Proctors could be called back again and again, year after year. For Kimberly's family, the legal process may have reached its conclusion, but the emotional battle is far from over. Every parole hearing, every reminder is another wave of grief. And yet they continue to fight, not just for Kimberly, but for other families who never want to face the same unrelenting pain. After Kimberly's death, her family became vocal advocates for change. They introduced the idea of Kimberly's Law, a proposal to tighten parole eligibility for young offenders convicted of especially violent crimes. The initiative drew public attention and highlighted concerns about gaps in the Youth Criminal Justice Act.
And hopefully some of these proposals will make a small step in reforming some of that and possibly preventing a similar situation from happening to somebody else's child.
Kimberly's Law calls for nationwide school threat assessment protocols, mandatory counseling and treatment, and greater parental accountability for their children's actions.
While it did not result in federal reform, it sparked national conversations about sentencing and justice for victims. For the Proctor family, Kimberly's legacy includes not just the pursuit of justice, but a lasting push to ensure that victims' voices are never lost in the process. Kimberly Proctor's story is not just about justice. It's about remembering who she was and what was lost. A bright, compassionate teenager who loved animals and brought joy to those around her, her life was stolen by two individuals she had once trusted. And while justice was served in court, true healing remains a journey. This case reminds us how dangerous it can be to ignore warning signs, how cruelty and manipulation can thrive in silence, especially online. But what stands out even more is the strength of Kimberly's family and the love they've kept alive in her memory. Justice has been served, but healing is ongoing. And Kimberly's story deserves to be remembered, not just for what was lost, but for who she truly was.